talking here before the show. And this is from Zach Hassan. So I'm just going to use this example because it literally just appeared on my desk, and it's probably a good thing to do. All right, here we go. Hi, Bill. I've recently stumbled across flat earther videos on YouTube. Two consistent arguments that they seem to make are related to pilots and flight. Number one, pilots don't fly in straight lines to their destinations, instead taking long, arcing, seemingly out-of-the-way routes. Think of going from Detroit to Germany flying down from the UK. And number two, if pilots fly level with the horizon and keep their elevators level, shouldn't they eventually crash since they're not constantly pointing their nose upwards to fight gravity? I'd like to see a steely-eyed missile man like yourself knock some sense into these flat earth Neanderthals. Okay, let's get started. To the first point, when you look at a map, and if I were to take my fiance's route from Moscow to Los Angeles, you would think that it would basically come across maybe just right around the middle of Great Britain, fly around and come in, so land on the eastern seaboard, to break, somewhere maybe Maryland, and then just fly across the U.S. and get to Los Angeles. And you would think that would be the fastest and shortest route. And if we lived on a flat world, it would be. The fact that they're asking this question is defeating their own argument, because that curved path on a flat surface, on a flat map, is evidence that the Earth is round. Because if you take that flight that you were just talking about, Zach, if you take the Detroit to Germany flight, and you do it on a globe with a piece of string, you will find that the route that the airline has flown is the shortest piece of string that you can possibly do it on. It's the shortest distance. And if you stretch it out over a globe, you will see it is, in fact, an absolutely straight line. It's 100%. It looks distorted on a flat map because all maps are distorted. This is called the Greenland effect, by the way. It's highly recommended because we've all seen the map of the Earth so many times, the Mercator projection map. And so we've had this map in our head of what the Earth looks like forever. I mean, just ever. And it's always been a flat map. But I would encourage you strongly to either get an old-fashioned globe or get something like Google Earth or anything where you can see the Earth and rotate it in 3D, and you will be astonished at how different the Earth truly really is since it's round. Africa is the size of North America, South America, Australia, 2 or 3 other, India, put together. They put them all inside of Africa. The Mercator projection tends to compress things at the equator and expand them out at the poles because they're trying to get a curved surface onto a flat one. This is evidence that the Earth is round. That curved line on a flat surface is evidence that the Earth is round because, as I said, if you do it on a globe, you won't have any problem with this at all. You'll find that if you take a piece of string and one's on Detroit and the other one's in Berlin and you just move it around, you will find that the shortest path from one to the other is, in fact, to go damn near over the North Pole. I flew to, I knew what was happening, but it was still astonishing. I flew to Thailand back in 2012, and I didn't give it a lot of thought, obviously, just thinking about it. I thought the plane's going to take off. We're going to fly off to the west. We'll probably pass somewhere south of Hawaii, I guess, somewhere in there, and we'll come in from the ocean, right around the latitude of Bangkok. Maybe we'll go a little bit over the Japanese islands, or we might see something like that, see some tropical islands south of Hawaii, something like that. Anyway, the plane gets off the ground, and it makes a right turn, and this plane starts heading almost due north. In order for me to fly from Los Angeles to Thailand, I had to fly the entire west coast of the United States, the entire west coast of Canada. I flew directly over the Aleutian Islands up in Alaska, and then we started to come down through northern China. I think we came down over North Korea, and it seems to you that you're going pretty much due north and then pretty much due south. And the reason it seems that to you is because that's exactly what you're doing. You could go from Los Angeles straight west around the Earth and get to Thailand, but that would be a longer route than the one that they take being polar. Those routes are determined very simply. Those weird kind of paths. Natasha basically going from Moscow directly north through Finland up north of Iceland, virtually the North Pole, and then coming down through the middle of Canada instead of coming in from the east and North Carolina. The reason they do that is to save flight time, and they do it to save fuel, and it works like a charm. I don't know if that is the exact definition of great circle navigation. I think that's actually something different. But as far as your flat earther people, you can tell them the fact that the line looks curved on a flat surface is in fact evidence that the Earth is round, because if you look at it on a round surface, you will find that it is in fact a straight line. So there's number one argument out the door. And this is how we kind of do it, by the way. Where is it? Steve? Was it Steve? Yeah. How do we know we're right? So that's number one. We can reason it out. If somebody tells me that the Earth is flat, and the evidence is that these planes take these weird courses, then we start breaking down the problem. If the Earth was flat, why isn't it a straight line? The fact that it's not a straight line means the Earth's not flat, right? And then you figure out that if you put it on a globe and it all makes sense and so on. This other one's awful cool too. If pilots fly level with the horizon and keep their elevators level, shouldn't they eventually crash, since they're not constantly pointing their noses upward to fight gravity? I'd love to see a steely-eyed missile man like yourself knock some sense into these flat Earth Neanderthals. Well, first of all, if you fly level to the horizon long enough, you will crash. But it'll be because you run out of fuel. There's a joke I like very much that was told, I think it was Lufthansa pilots. And Lufthansa was flying Boeing 747s, and they were also flying the I want to say it's the A340. It's the four-engine, but it's not the giant A380. I think that's right. In any event, the 747 Lufthansa pilots had a joke at the expense of the A320 pilots, and they said the joke was, what makes the A320 gain altitude? And the answer is the curvature of the Earth. And I just thought that was hilarious. In other words, that plane is so underpowered it just flies straight and the Earth falls away underneath it. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about a plane in level flight. So let's break this one down. Let's say you're at 30,000 feet and you've got a carpenter's level, and you put it on the floor of the airplane, and you find that the plane is absolutely level. It's 100% level, and you are wondering why you're not crashing to the ground. The reason is because while the airplane is level, the wings aren't level. I want to say that's the angle of incidence. It is, I think. If you look at an airplane from the side, you'll see that when it's sitting on the ground, it's perfectly horizontal. The cabin is perfectly horizontal, but the front edge of the wing is considerably higher than the trailing edge of the wing. So the plane is moving forward through the air level, but the wing itself has not only an angle to it, it has curvature to it. This also goes to the fact that they don't understand much about aerodynamics, because a plane does not fly because of thrust. It's not the it does obviously, but it's not just thrust that's keeping it in the air. In other words, the plane is not being held aloft by the power of its jet engines shooting down. There's virtually no airplane in the world. There's a handful of fighters that will actually go up, can accelerate straight up. Virtually every other plane in the world is just got enough power. So the answer is, you're flying level, the wing is at an angle. The wing is at an angle, and that's what allows the lift to continue all along the wings, and all the engines are doing is moving it forward. Now, this is one of the things that guys like Burt Rutan talk about when you're talking about trying to get things up into space. If you try to get something straight up, if you try to lift it straight up the ground, you've got to have nothing but pure thrust. That means big engines. It means lots of fuel, lots of oxidizer, and so on. But if you're only trying to push it a little bit sideways, that's much less energy, because the wings are doing the work. The wings are doing the work. It's lift. So that is the answer to their question, and they can prove it to themselves the second they go on an airplane, or the second they go look at their books or whatever it is, their cave drawings, whatever they're using. You could make a case for the flat Earth in the Middle Ages. It wasn't a good case, because the F4 could not go vertical. Dave Wellman says the F-15 can go vertical. It is the first plane ever built, I think, in any numbers anyway, that has a thrust-to-weight ratio greater than 1. An F-15 Eagle can point itself on its tail, nose straight up in the sky, and accelerate. That was the first plane that could do it. The F-4, I don't think, even came close. In any event, so we look at these things with these people with these kind of comments, and you say the flat Earth, there are people been in space, there are people in orbit. It's just I think half of these people are trolling you, to be honest with you. But even in the Middle Ages, you knew you couldn't really measure, you couldn't really count on a flat Earth for a couple different reasons. The main one is that ships disappear over the horizon. That's not something you can explain on a flat Earth. On an exceptionally clear day, especially with a telescope, small telescope, if you look straight out to sea, you could see the masts, the top part of the sails, before the main part of the boat. And as the boat got closer and closer and closer, it looked like the masts and the sails were coming out of the water. And that's exactly what was happening, because they were traveling on a curved surface towards your line of sight. And people just, a lot of people think that most people thought the Earth was flat, that nobody understood that the Earth was round until Galileo and or somebody. But no, the ancient Greeks had it figured out. And had it figured out ingeniously, by the way, ingeniously. They stuck a stick in the ground in one location, and then someplace 200-300 miles away, they did it at another location. And they made sure that both of these sticks were completely vertical. And then using their primitive time pieces, but whatever they had, they measured the shadow angle at the same time at noon, let's say. And since one of these sticks was a little bit further south than the other one, it's casting a different shadow. And they were able to do it with math. And they were very close, very close. I think they said 7,800 or something, or it's actually 8,001, something very close. So this whole flat Earth thing is, a flat Earth and flat universe and flat everything else. There's nothing up there. If the Earth is flat, what's beneath it? What's it resting on? The stars appear to go around us. That's just because we're rotating. That's another example, by the way. The fact that the stars are moving is evidence that this Earth is rotating. So in answer to your question, Steve, you can build heuristically pretty good arguments if your fundamentals are strong. And, I taught astronomy for quite a while. I'm pretty strong in astronomy. I'm pretty strong in aviation. And my heuristic knowledge goes deeper. So if somebody gives you a top-level question, something that's a very complicated question, because to be honest with you, it is a somewhat complicated question, you have to be able to break it down into smaller arguments, and then you have to have the information or go find the information necessary to resolve this issue. And as always, Occam's razor applies. Given everything else being equal, the more simple explanation is almost certainly true. So, you could have lots and lots of explanations for missiles and missing airplanes and thousands of witnesses and hundreds and hundreds of air traffic controllers, and you can do all of that stuff. Or you could do what you saw happen right in front of your eyes, which is some people hijacked an airplane, flew it into a building. It's pretty simple, really. And by the way, let me just close on that. There is a quality to flat earthers and 9/11 inside job guys and moon landing was a hoax guys and those kind of guys. There is a pattern to them, and the pattern is, generally speaking, they're extremely antisocial people. This mom's basement thing actually does come from someplace. I've met a few of them, and the ones that I've met, big UFO champions, went over to their house to have a debate with them, and they're just not social people. They're hermits. They live in their own head, in their own little world, and they don't get out much. And so, what I think happens when you have the Kennedy assassination thing, or you have the moon landing thing, or you have the 9/11 thing, people get a sense that they're special, that they have special knowledge, that they're smarter than other people, or they're more educated than other people, that they can handle things. Emotionally, they're more secure, that they can handle things that the sheeple out there can't handle. And I think that's their way of kind of getting revenge on society. I'm not saying every single person is this way, but I think it's a real strong trait. That you have antisocial people who are shunned, and I've never seen one of them ever making any reasonable income, because you can't make reasonable income if you think the Earth is flat. So I think the thing that's such an emotional draw for them is it convinces them by picking a very few dots and trying to draw a straight line through them. It convinces them that here at home, after hours of study and having read the right books, I'm on to the inner workings of things, and I see it, and all of those successful, happy people out there don't. And it's just, it's amazing what they will believe. This one guy was talking about had a picture of, he had a video of something, I think he called them rods, new kind of alien rods. They appear on video and they're long, and at the end they've got like these little spiky things. And he's giving me this frame by frame. He says, you can watch frame by frame by frame by frame. And sure enough, after 30, 40, 50 frames or something, this thing comes in, and this elongated thing comes in and goes around and flies out of the frame and so on. And he says, how do you explain that? And I said, can I see that in real time, please? And he played it in real time. It's just a bee. It's honest to God just a bee flying across the screen, leaving a little motion streak. And then you have to really say, okay, look, dude, that one is nonsense, and you know it. You created it. I've seen pictures of UFOs that were in formation that looked like a bunch of ovals flying in a V formation, and they're geese, but they're also not just geese, but they're geese that has been blown up in the video just like 700, 800, 900%. They're just digital artifacts. You can't see the neck of the goose. Well, you can't see the leaves on the trees either. It's just an image that's very far away. So anyway, TG Gecko has the comment of the night, I think. He said that the Titanic was an inside job. Icebergs can't break steel rivets. I could make a case for that, TG. I really could. I could run with that. I could run with that and just say, look, here's a block of ice. Here's a piece of steel. I'm going to take the block of ice and go bang, 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 bang. See? The steel is stronger than the ice. The ice eventually cracks and falls apart. Therefore, the Titanic was sunk by a German submarine or whatever the hell else I want to say. And again, as with the steel in the 9/11 thing, you realize that they're presenting to you a very small set of data where certain things are actually true, but that is not what happens in larger scales or with larger things. In the case of the Titanic, you've got you don't have a little brick of ice, because if somebody threw an ice cube against the Titanic, the Titanic would not have sunk having struck an ice cube, and the Titanic would not have sunk having struck a beach ball made of ice, and it wouldn't have sunk if it struck something the size of a bus. But when you strike a mountain, essentially, of which 9/10 is underneath the water, the mass of that ice is so extraordinary that it will in fact cave in the side of a steel boat. And that's why it happens. And there's a terrific video online. It's one of my favorites. It's by a guy who's an iron worker, and he comes out into his shop, and he says, "I just want to talk to I want to address something about these idiots who are saying that steel, couldn't have been melted by the World Trade Center." So he gets this steel bar, and he puts it in a like a hole in an anvil, and he pulls on it really, really hard, and he tilts the anvil. He said, "This is a regular steel bar, and you can see that the steel is very strong enough for me to tilt this anvil," and so on. He says, "Now, I'm going to put this in the furnace," and he puts it in the furnace, and it comes out, and he says, "This steel, you'll notice, is not melting. In fact, the thing's not even bending or drooping. It looks just like red hot steel." But he puts it back into that holder and pulls on it, and the steel's just like a wet noodle. It's going wherever he wants it to. He says steel doesn't have to melt in order to lose its strength. Any other questions, idiots? And off he goes. Those things, that's the end of the argument. When you see something, you can be misinformed about things, and that's okay, because everybody's misinformed about things. But when you see something like that, when you see a steel bar reduced to spaghetti and yet holding its shape, you realize that what they say is true. It was hot enough to weaken the steel. You've got 7, 10, 15, 20 stories in one case, and more like 30 or 40 of concrete sitting on top of these steel structures, half of which have been destroyed by this kinetic energy of this incoming airplane. Of course it could happen. And it did. And we all saw it. And when we watched it, there's not one person in the world who watched those videos live who said, this is a government operation. Look at that little flash underneath the airplane. It's not a real airplane. Anybody who's half sane who watched this stuff on the air said, my God, somebody's flown an airplane into that building. And my God, the building collapsed because it's been on fire for an hour and it's got gigantic, huge holes in it. And then after the fact, people start thinking about how they're going to be special, and then they start talking about shadows on the moon, and they start talking about all these other things. Every single one of them can be defeated. And when you get to the point where you've defeated 4 or 5 of them, and they keep falling back, in other words, if they present their strongest evidence up front and you knock it down pretty much effortlessly, and then they go to their second position, you knock that down. They go to the third position, you knock that down. You go to the fourth position, you knock that down. They won't stop. They'll call it a tie because they've still got 35 or 40 arguments to make. But if their best arguments, the ones they're leading with, are that easy to disprove, then what does that tell you about the other little things they've built their entire worldview on? It's a disease, and it's getting worse, and it's a form of virtue signaling. If only to yourself. It's a way of telling yourself, and maybe the other few enlightened people who are in on the thing. It's a way for them to feel smarter and stronger mentally, and more informed and special. They're special. And by the way, the idea that this was a government operation suits them too, because it means not only are they clued in, but they're also kind of fighters in a way, right? They're like spies or rebels. They're the ones out there in the information that the corporate death machine hasn't reached yet, and they could be at any moment could be just taken out. Somebody with an umbrella just pop, inject a radioactive dart with them, or maybe one night a black helicopter is going to come and take me away because I'm so damn important that I understand these things that nobody else understands. And it just isn't so. Open up the windows, go outside, walk down, get a hamburger, sit there, smile at people, and eventually your moon landing theories and your 9/11 theories and your UFO theories and your John F. Kennedy theories will go away. And I'll spend some time on the Kennedy thing too, because there's somebody I respect very much who still believes that, and it's pretty easy to knock down, I think.